guys, I'm going to continue on reading Old Wolf by Avi. Hopefully you've listened to the first 10 chapters and you know what's going on. But as you know, in this one, I think the author's craft of having two parallel plots is one of the reasons why this book is so good. We find out, we have one plot going on in the animal kingdom with the wolf pack, and we have the other plot going on in a boy named Casey who just turned 13, his family, who live in the same area as the wolves. My dogs are going to visit us too, I think, so I can hear them. Anyway, chapter 11. Backpack stuffed with school books in one hand, archery book in the other, Casey climbed into the shotgun seat of his mom's old SUV. At the same time, his dad got into his Ford panel truck parked alongside. Casey's mom rolled down her window and called to her husband. "Where are you working today, honey?" "A line is sparking over in Philbeck. See if you can get home early. Weather is coming, and I think we've got a birthday dinner tonight." Troy looked past Bess to his son and grinned. "Wouldn't miss it for anything." "Be safe," she called to him, what she said every time he went off. Troy's diesel motor truck rumbled to life, idled for a short time, and then began to bump and bounce down the dirt road. You can see how, we already figured out that this is in like a mountainous area. And, when one of us drives off to work, we're not bouncing down a dirt road. So the setting definitely impacts, the story. Casey's mom followed. The moment her SUV moved onto the tar-smooth country road south to Clarksville, Casey flipped open his new book. His eyes took in the first words. "You must learn to handle archery equipment safely. Target archers and bow hunters alike must be aware of the harm an arrow can do if they do not exercise care at all times." The text went on. "When we were kids, the local police department gave a demonstration on the park archery range. A policeman filled a gallon jug with sand and placed a balloon behind it. He fired a handgun into the jug. The sand stopped the bullet. An archer shot an arrow into the jug. It passed through the sand and popped the balloon." The policeman made his point to would-be archers. An arrow can be lethal when shot from a bow. Casey stopped reading and stared out the window, thrilled at the thought of all that power. Chapter 12. Plot shifts back to the wolves. Nishaba jogged along the forest trail for 2 more miles but saw nothing of the raven. He had traveled 6 miles now and was tired. His paw was throbbing. When he drew near a clearing that he recognized, he stopped, unsure about continuing. He sniffed the air, but if there were animals or humans in or beyond the clearing, the back-blowing breeze did not bring him any clue. He remained motionless, watching and listening intensely, only to have the silence broken by a brash caw. The raven was close. Nishaba waited. Once again the raven's cry came. Caw, caw. Is it a warning or a welcome? Nishaba wondered. He moved to the edge of the clearing, then halted to study the open space. It was almost 90 yards end to end. Opposite where he stood, the ground rose into a hill covered with leafless aspen trees. The center earth looked muddy from runoff from the hill. Here and there, stinkweed had begun to poke up, looking like green flames. To the left was a small pond, walled in on the far side by a border of high grass, still brown. 2 thin discs of ice floated on the still waters. The pond surface mirrored the trees on the hills so perfectly, it was hard to know what was real and what was reflection. As Nishaba looked on, a pair of red-winged blackbirds called to each other from the tall grass. Sensing nothing to fear, Nishaba stepped into the clearing. Next to the pond stood an ancient aspen, its lower trunks encircled by crusty gray bark. One branch reached over the pond. As Nishaba looked, a raven flew onto it. A female, he was sure of it. She was a big bird, some 24 inches in length, completely black. Her feathers glistened with an ebony sheen. The large, pointy, and slightly curved bill, its base partly covered with feathers, was just as black. Around her neck, feathers were shaggy. Each of her black legs had 4 sharp talons, which gripped the branch tightly. The tail was wedged sharply. Her eyes are black and beady. Bright, Nishaba thought, with the knowledge of something. He studied the bird suspiciously. The raven leaned toward him. "Caw!" she cried. "You took your time, Wolf. I've been waiting quite a while." To Nishaba's ears, the bird's voice was loud, coarse, and rude. Not wanting her to think he had merely come because she called, Nishaba ambled to the edge of the pond and casually lapped up some cold water. It eased his hunger. His drink done, he kept his head low, the better to scan the pond. Perhaps there would be a fish or a frog to eat. "It's still too cold for frogs," the raven squawked. Irritated that the bird had guessed what he was thinking, Nishaba made no reply. Beautiful illustrations. Again, they're by Brian Flacco. You can see this raven has a big personality already. Nonetheless, the bird leaned forward, opened her beak, extended her black tongue, and made clacking noises. "In case you didn't know," she said, it'll take 2 more weeks of good weather before the frogs start peeping." She cocked her head to one side. "Would you, Nishaba, leader of the Iron Mountain Pack, really eat a frog?" Ignoring the jibe, but pleased that the bird knew who and what he was, the wolf glanced up. "Do I know you?" The raven sidestepped toward the end of the branch, her weight causing it to bow down closer to Nishaba's head. "My name is Merla," said the raven. "And you have heard of me?" said Nishaba. "I know everything about this forest." "Everything?" Merla bobbed her head. "We ravens are smart, the smartest." Nishaba, annoyed by the raven's conceit, did not reply. "Everybody knows how smart we are," said the bird. "No creature in the world are as clever as ravens." "What about wolves?" "Caw!" cried Merla to Nishaba. It sounded like laughter. "I know many things," the raven went on, cocking her head to the side, "and one of them is that it's not smart to argue with someone who wants to help." "You're just a bird," snapped Nishaba. "How can a bird help a wolf like me?" He sat, tail extended, and deliberately kept his eyes on the pond. The pair of red-winged blackbirds fluttered about, their red shoulder markings flashing like flaring flames. The wolf wondered if the birds had built a nest and if there were eggs in it. He would be glad to eat 1 or 2. The raven remained quiet for a few moments and studied Nishaba. Then she said, "When a wolf sits by a cold pond willing to eat slimy frogs and small bird eggs, I'd say he's very hungry." How did she guess my thoughts again? Nishaba wondered. All he said, however, was, "Better to eat than to starve." "What an original idea," the bird cried mockingly. "But I imagine you'd be interested if I told you there was a small herd of elk not far from here. No bulls, Nishaba, just cows and calves. The calves are so young they are still spotted." "Caw!" cried the raven. "Very tender and tasty for sure." Nishaba, trying to contain his eagerness, waited before saying, "I suppose I might be interested." "I suppose you might," echoed Merla, her voice thick with sarcasm. "I suppose you just might." she said again, and made 2 quick scratchy rubs of her bill on the branch as if to sharpen her wit. And you and I might be of use to each other. Not likely, Nishaba said. Don't be a wormwit, Wolf, cried the raven. You know perfectly well that what I'm suggesting. When wolves kill, ravens feast. Now Nishaba knew that when wolves were successful in a hunt, ravens quickly gathered at the remains. They liked to eat what wolves killed. He found the practice contemptible. That he might be beholden to such a creature was offensive to him. Wolf, cried the raven, think. It's almost spring. The elk don't have much energy. The bull is nowhere in sight or smell of his harem. Just cows, Nishaba, just cows and their calves. She leaned forward, and the calves are defenseless. Sometimes they are even left alone. Easy food, old wolf, yours for the taking. The word food made Nishaba's stomach rumble, but to take advice from a bird? Then he thought to himself, the pack needn't know how I found the elk. He looked up. Show me, he said, as casually as he could. Merla, head to one side, gazed at the wolf with her beady black eyes. She was enjoying the moment. Then she gave a loud caw and leapt into the air. Once airborne, she made a sharp turn, extending her wings, their full 4 feet, until her feathery tips stuck out like individual fingers. Whoosh! Looking like her own shadow, she flew in a southerly direction. Nishaba had to scramble to keep her in sight.